So I got a YouTube channel, Bob, called Dave the Insurance Guy, and I like to do JFK stuff. And I originally met you off of our Facebook group. The first one is Friends Who Like Jim LaValle, and I know he's turned out to be a friend of yours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And but you worked for, was it the Dallas Times-Herald?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that a tough job to get back then?
Well, I guess I was lucky I was in the right place at the right time. I started with them in 1960, and they were in, I had visited with them. I went to Felix McKnight, who at the time was at the Dallas News, and he was editor there, and I went to him, kind of job hunting, because I had not studied photography or journalism, at all, and so it was really a hobby that turned into a profession. And I went to him, but I had the Army ahead of me, and he said, "Well, when you get out, come see me." So I went in on the 6 months program that they had then, 7.5 years reserve, because my next door neighbor was, later he became the commanding general of the 36th Infantry. He was always trying to get me to join his National Guard unit. So I was heavy into the sports car world at the time, and I didn't really want to go away for 3 years. So I joined on that 6 months program. And so after the 6 months active duty, I went to see Felix McKnight again, who was now at the Dallas Times-Herald as managing editor. And I was just, lucky, because the paper had decided to hire 4 new photographers on the staff. They were using a combination of their photographers and wire service photographers. So they all worked out of the Times-Herald building, but the paper wanted to kind of get rid of some of the wire service guys and replace them, with their own. And so that's how I got the job, and they figured they could get me cheap, because I was just really starting out as a news photographer. So I went to work for the Herald in September of '60. So I'd been there 3 years when the JFK thing came up.
You were originally out at Love Field when LBJ landed first, and then JFK right after that. That was
right. Yeah.
And a lot of the pictures we see nowadays are some that you've taken.
Yeah, my assignment that day, the chief photographer and I went to Love Field in his car and to cover the arrival of Kennedy. And so then I was to get in which turned out to be the 7th car behind the president in the motorcade, and then my what I was supposed to do was shoot pictures along the route, in the 5-mile route to town, roughly, and then cover his speech at the Trade Mart. So that was my assignment that morning.
And that was the 22nd, Friday.
Right.
Okay.
And I had a Nikon with a wide-angle lens, and I had another Nikon with a telephoto zoom. So I had those 2 cameras.
What was the model? People will want to know what you're shooting with.
Well, the Nikon with the wide angle was an S3 rangefinder camera, and then I had a Nikon F single lens reflex with a 50 to 250 zoom. And so we photographed the arrival, and then John Mazziota, the chief photographer, he took our film from the airport back to the paper. And they wanted me to shoot whatever, I could along the route. Of course, when you're sitting on the back seat, the back of the back seat of a convertible, and you're in a motorcade, there's really not much you can shoot except the crowd on each side of the road. And whenever we were on a curve, which only happened once,
Is that Harwood in Maine? Was the first?
Well, let me go. Let's go back to the motorcade when we were going down Lemon Avenue, and we went under the overpass, the railroad overpass, which later became a toll road. And I was able to shoot some of the motorcade ahead of me because it was a kind of a little dip in the road and then a rise up on the other side of the dip. So I was able to get pictures there. And then when we were on Turtle Creek, closer to downtown, we were on a curve, and I was able to shoot the motorcade ahead of me. But other than that, there really wasn't much to shoot. And it was all repetitious. So then when we went through downtown, I was to unload my cameras and put the film in an envelope, and we had a reporter at the corner of May and Houston, which is where the motorcade made a right turn, and which put us facing the book depository. So I shot a crowd shot, which you probably have seen. It's gotten a lot of play. I shot that with the wide-angle lens, and everybody, the crowd was all, waving at us in the cars. And so then I figured that was about probably 7 or 8 minutes or less before the assassination. And so I unloaded the cameras, and I unloaded the one camera, the long lens. I only had shot about 4 or 5 frames on the other camera with the wide lens, and I remember thinking, I'm not going to unload this camera. It's ridiculous. I figured we would be getting a lot more images that the paper would use, Now, looking back, I should have just shot everything I could see, but, none of us were thinking about that.
Right. Well, you mentioned you went right past Turtle Creek. I think you all were close to General Walker's house, weren't you?
Yes.
But
yeah, we were.
But no,
we went Lemon Avenue.
I'm sorry.
We went Lemon Avenue to Turtle Creek and made a right turn, and so we were fairly close to Walker's house. I would say when we made that right turn onto Turtle Creek, his house was to our left, a couple of blocks, up the road, but fairly close. Well, we didn't go right by it, no.
Right. And at that time, were you aware of what Oswald did in April of '63? Were you kind of familiar with it?
Oh yes, yeah. Okay. I was aware of it, right.
So probably didn't cross anybody's mind as you're driving the route. Probably wasn't thinking about that with the president of town.
No.
But you mentioned you put the film in an envelope and you toss it. Was it Featherington or?
Featherston. Jim Featherston.
Uh-huh.
And he was stationed there on the corner. And as we began the turn, I spotted him. I tossed the film out, and the winds were kind of gusty that morning, so he didn't catch it right away. The wind caught the envelope, and I remember we were laughing in the car because he had to chase it. And all the time we were turning the corner, and by the time we got straightened out, almost, we heard the first shot, and then two more shots closer together. There was a gap between the first and second. And I remember Tom Dillard and I looked at each other. We're the ones sitting up on the back of the seat, and we looked at each other quickly. I mean, this all happened really fast. And, of course, the shots came from in front of us. You know, it was just normal to look that direction. And I remember looking up at the book depository, and we're still moving along slowly. And I saw two black men leaning out of the window below the shooter's window, and they were looking up directly above them. And so that, you know, of course, I saw all that at once, and I see the rifle on the window ledge. And I said, "There's a rifle." As I was saying that, he was pulling it in. And Tom said, "Where?" You know, and I pointed out the empty window. And I remember he swung his camera up and took a picture. Now, my camera is in my lap with the back off, because the Nikon F, you had to remove the back to put film in it. So my camera was in my lap. I still had not been able to reload it that quick. And so I'm sitting there, you know, with an empty camera with a long lens. And there wasn't any reason to shoot with the other camera. Maybe hindsight, maybe I should have, but I'm trying to make sure I don't drop the back to the camera and you know, stay on the seat. And by the time we got to the left turn, the next corner, where the motorcade turned left, the driver stopped because the other newsman in the car wanted to get out. And so I'm wondering, what should I do, you know? And this was all quick. And I looked to my left as these guys were getting out of the stopped car, and I could see the confusion on the grassy knoll, you know, people running. I could see Kennedy's car disappear under the underpass. And I could see the Newman family, as I later found out, you know, covering their child on the grassy knoll. And one of the motorcycle cops went up the grassy knoll on his bike up to the top, jumped off. I remember the motorcycle kept going until it fell over. He ran to the front door of the book depository. Another policeman joined him there, and the two of them went in the front door. Now, I saw all this in a matter of seconds while these guys were getting out of the car, and I thought, well, you know, whoever's doing this shooting is going to get caught. He's not ever going to come out of that building for us to take a picture of him. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That was my first thought. And then I thought, well, you know, I'm supposed to say in the motorcade, I'm supposed to shoot the president at the trademark. But I didn't know the president was hit. At that point, I just knew somebody was shooting at the motorcade. So I stayed in the car. The rest of them got out. I stayed in the car, and by then we were moving, you know, following the lead cars. And as we went down past the grassy knoll, I could see the look on some of the faces, and I thought, you know, this is they're really upset. This is bad. Maybe I should get out. And so we went under the underpass, and I asked the driver to stop and let me out. So we were on the other side of the underpass. I got out. I ran back under the highway and up to the grassy knoll. To my best recollection, I probably put the camera back on the camera by now, but I don't think I had reloaded it. I had not put film in it. But that's just something I don't remember for sure. So I'm up on the grassy knoll, and people were, upset, and I could tell it was bad, and I thought, why am I doing this? I should have started shooting pictures of people, Then I thought, well, I've screwed up. I'm supposed to follow the president. And so by then, this is within a matter of, minutes, I realized from what people were saying that he was hit. JFK was hit.
What?
Here. I should have stayed in the motorcade. I recognized another photographer as being from UPI, White House press corps, and then another guy who I don't remember who he was, but the three of us were standing there, and the traffic had been held up on Houston, at the intersection there of Houston and Elm Street. And I saw the police moving the barricades and letting the traffic through. And I remember thinking, my gosh, these people are now going to be driving over potential evidence, but they let the traffic go, which it shouldn't have done. So the traffic's going down the same route, under the triple underpass, and these two other guys and I said they'd probably would be going to Parkland Hospital, so we need to get there. And that was just a guess. So we flagged down a woman and got in her car, told her we were newsmen and we needed to get to Parkland Hospital, and we got in, and we went under the underpass and up onto Simmons Freeway. And as we got onto the freeway, they were stopping, a motorcycle policeman was stopping traffic and checking every car. We told him, who we were, and while we're doing this, I heard on his police radio, on his motorcycle, I heard them talking about, somebody said, well, we don't know where the shots came from. So I said to the cop, I know where the shots came from.
That's
and
amazing.
So he took my name and phone number and everything and let us go. So she took us to Parkland Hospital, and that's where I remained until they removed Kennedy's body and everything. And of course, if I'd have been in the motorcade and I'd been in the seventh car, I would have had lots of pictures there at the emergency entrance. But by the time we got there, they were keeping us, pretty far back. But while we're waiting for whatever is going to happen next, I remember a police radio talking about a shooting, policeman shooting in Oak Cliff. And I remember, I don't know who I was talking to, I just remember saying, golly, I wonder if there's any connection. But, anyway, so I don't remember to this day how I got back to the paper, but of course we were never allowed into the hospital, and I went back to the paper, probably got a ride with another media person, and I ran my film, and I stayed there at the paper until well into the evening, and then I ended up at the police station later, and it's all kind of vague. I was at the police station into the night, and the next day, Saturday, was my day off. I was the Sunday man that week. We had one guy on Sunday, sometimes two if we needed him, and
well, let me stop you just a second. I want to stick on Friday just for a minute.
Okay.
So when you're turning off at Main Street and going right on Houston, there's a story or something I heard that you got a picture off, and possibly the school book depository. So that's not accurate. That's not true, is it?
Definitely not.
Yeah. So you didn't have your film.
No, I wasn't ready to start shooting again, and of course, natural curiosity. I mean, after somebody's fired 3 shots out of a window in front of you, you're concentrating on that scene, and that's why, I wasn't thinking about.
That's amazing to me. That's amazing. You're one of only 3 or 4 people who actually saw the barrel
4.
up in the window.
4. Yeah.
And you still remember it well?
Oh yeah.
Boy, that's amazing. That's truly amazing.
Yeah, I remember when the Warren Commission. I remember the Secret Service. I was going to drive my car to the airport, leave it, and because they'd given me the flight information and everything. Secret Service came and picked me up at home. They didn't want me. They wanted to, pick me up at home and put me on the plane. And I remember joking about the fact that all 4 of the witnesses, we were all on the same plane. So what if the plane crashed?
Oh, boy.
All the witnesses would be gone.
Oh, boy. Hate to think of that. Do you,
Yeah.
do you remember the police officer that stopped the traffic there in Stemmons, his name?
No, I do not.
Yeah, I wonder
No.
if he...
I'm not sure I ever heard his name.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Isn't
Yeah,
that
and
something?
it's just kind of freaky that while we're sitting there, which was just for a few minutes or less, that I hear somebody saying, "We don't know where the shots came from," on his radio. So, and I said, "I know where they came from."
Wow, you might have been the first human being to say that.
Could be.
To law enforcement, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. And then Sunday you were assigned to the Oswald transfer. I wanted to ask you, did you happen to notice Jack Rubio walking down the ramp?
Oh no.
Yeah. I didn't think so. But at what point? Well, first, did you know who he was?
Well, I knew who Jack Ruby was. Yeah. He would come up to the newspaper a lot. He's always promoting his girls at the club and all that. I remember one occasion. I think he had a stripper that was putting herself through school, and she danced with a boa constrictor.
Boy.
I remember that, but I don't remember any of the others. But I remember he came up there a lot. But I wouldn't have, if he'd have walked up to me that day, I wouldn't have known it's Jack Ruby.
Okay. Did you like him? Was he likable, or was he a all about me guy, or what kind of guy was he?
I did not know him well enough to make a judgment.
Yeah.
I have a good friend in Dallas who had a private club, and he and I were both friends because of Carroll Shelby and the sports car scene. And he had breakfast at the Ruby many times. There were a group of them would shut their businesses down and go have breakfast somewhere. And so he described Ruby as being a hothead, but a very likable guy, would do anything for you. If you needed a favor, he would do it. But he was, quick-tempered.
Yeah, sparky.
But otherwise, a likable guy. And so, yeah, that's about it. But no, go ahead.
On Sunday, did they have you back behind that railing there originally?
No.
So you just had to kind of elbow for space. You're probably in competition with beers to get a good space.
Well, when I went down there that morning, I went in the door on Harwood Street, and there was no one checked my ID or anything. I just went to the elevator and went up to the press room and waited around, and then my reporter showed up, Bob Finley, and we had been told that they were going to move Ruby about 9:30 in the morning, roughly 9:30. And I think I got down there probably 8:30 or so. And I remember as I was driving down Ross Avenue in my car, there was a truck coming toward me, and just as he got past me, he backfired. And I remember from the day before, 2 days before, the gunshots, Yeah. I just remember what a strange thing to happen, as I'm going down there.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, when they finally took us down, and I had a dual assignment, both of us. I was to shoot the transfer of Oswald, and then I was to hightail it out to Parkland Hospital for Nellie Connolly's press conference. So, anyway, they took us downstairs to the basement, and we were just kind of milling around and talking to each other and everything, and they were setting up the pool TV camera and all of that. And so pretty soon it became apparent that this was not, that they were not going to bring him down at 9:30, and we were concerned about getting out to Parkland Hospital. So I said to Finley, why don't you go call, because we didn't have two-way radios or cell phones. Now, UPI, the wire services, had two-way radios, and I remember we had begged the paper to get us some, but they hadn't done it at this point. So anyway, he went in and called the city desk, and there was a guy working on the city desk. I'll mention him later. Anyway, he said, it looks like it's going to be hard to make that second assignment. So the guy on the city desk said, the most important thing is that Connolly's press conference. Can't miss that. So you go back and you tell Jackson, if he can't get this shot of Oswald being transferred, just you guys go on out to Parkland Hospital and blow this off.
Wow.
And because we will get a picture of Oswald when they bring him in at the county jail. Uh-huh. Because we had a photographer down there, Eamon Kennedy. So he came back and told me that, and I said, you go back and tell him there's no way I'm leaving here. Because I wanted a picture of this guy,
Sure.
And I knew my chief photographer would back me up. And I said, I'm not leaving. I don't know about you, but I'm going to stay here until I get the shot. And so he went back in and called the desk again. And the guy on the desk said, oh, you guys are off the hook. Willie Allen came in, and Willie Allen was UPI. And, I knew the wire services were going to cover the press conference anyway. I knew they'd be there, and we'd have pictures of it. So Willie's going to cover the press conference, so you guys are off the hook. So we were off the hook. So eventually, I remember the police found the car there in the basement that they weren't sure whose it was and had a rifle in it. And so that was just a little sidetracking there. They brought, I have a picture of the cop carrying the rifle.
Okay.
And as it turned out, it belonged to a deputy sheriff, I was told, from East Texas, who had just come there to be there, So that was the frame on my film before the shooting. So finally, they said, we want everybody to get in position, find a spot. We don't want anybody moving around. You have about 5 minutes, they're going to bring him down. So I got my spot where I thought would be a good one.
Do you remember who told you they're going to bring him down in about 5 minutes?
No, it was just one of the police spokespersons or whatever. I don't know. They just kind of told us all to find a place. And
you mentioned a rifle in the car. That was a restricted area, wasn't it? Wasn't the public?
Oh yeah, that was police parking garage.
Okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, as it turned out, Beers always liked to get up high.
And he was with the Dallas Morning
News.
Okay, and that's your competitor.
Right.
But friendly competitor.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think we all got along pretty well. The press in Dallas, compared to some cities, I think we all were friendly competitors.
Okay.
So I got in position. I must have checked my camera 15 times, to make sure the film was wound. And I was
before you get that far, you said Beers liked to get up high. So did he kind of climb up on that railing or something?
He stood on that little concrete wall. Yeah.
Okay, right there, kind of back behind you.
Right, to my right, behind me.
So that would be towards the Harvey.
I didn't know that ahead of time until I saw his picture.
So he's more towards the Harwood side, which is opposite of Maine, kind of back to your right shoulder. Okay, go ahead.
Right shoulder. He was closer to the pool TV, the TV lights and all that.
Okay.
He was closer to that guy. So they said, here he comes, they're bringing him down. So I'm looking through the camera, I'm making sure I'm in the right spot and whatever. And then I'm aware that this police car, unmarked, which I found out from your page that was Fritz's car. I didn't know that, but or whether it really was. But the car was backing slowly, and I know some of these guys have discussed the horn honking and all that. Well, he honked because he wanted to make sure nobody was behind him, because they were press, getting in position and everything. So the car is moving, And I remember looking down at my feet, make sure the car wasn't going to roll over my foot, because it was moving. And about the time it stopped, to the best of my recollection, it stopped. They step out into the opening. Oswald and the two police step into the opening. The car stops. I see this body moving fast from my right, maybe taking 2 steps, and then the shooting.
Wow.
And he shot and I shot. I mean, I couldn't have planned it any better. If I'd have known everything was going to happen, I'm not sure I would have gotten the picture I got. I mean, you know, it just came together.
You had your Nikon S.
I had the S3 with a Graflex strobe on it.
And you had a pre-focus in that area?
I was pre-focused a little over 10 feet.
Uh-huh.
And you know, we had motor drives in those days, but they were just coming out, and they weren't perfect. And I had no motor drive on the camera, on either camera. And well, you know, when you stop and think, this was a simple shot, a simple picture. We had done it before. The police would call us, say, hey, we're moving Joe Blow, we're taking him down to Huntsville, you know, to death row or whatever. You might want to get a picture of him before we take him down there. And so we would go over and stand in front of a doorway at the county jail, and where they were going to remove him, and they'd come out and we'd snap a picture and go back to the paper. You know, it was just a matter of timing the shot. So it wasn't a difficult shot. It was just that it was a little more important. You didn't want to screw up.
Yeah. Do you, did you think you missed it?
No, I thought I had a good picture from the beginning. I was just not sure about the timing of it. Did I punch the shutter before the gun went off, or as the gun went off, you know, or at the right point? And I was not positive. I mean, like Frank Johnston, who was White House, he was UPI, who later became part of the White House crew. He was a young guy, I think, based in Austin, and he was covering that for UPI. And he was jumping around. He said to me, "Did you get that? Did you get it?" And I said, I don't know what I said, but I didn't say, "Oh yeah, I got it." But he said, "I got it, I got it." As it turned out, his picture was just before, and he got a really nice shot of them bringing Oswald out, you know, on the stretcher and everything, as best I remember. But I wasn't about to say, "Oh yeah, I got it." And so let me think now if there's anything else pertinent there. Let's see. Well, anyway, after the shooting,
did Beers make any comments?
You know, he and I were standing close to each other on one of the videos after the shooting, when we were all just kind of milling around down there. But I don't remember anything we said to each other. I just don't remember if we said anything, you know.
I wonder if he thought he got a good shot too.
Well, I'm sure he did. I would think he did. See, being up there where he was, he saw this unfolding. This is just my feeling. He saw this unfolding before I did, because he was looking down on the whole scene. And that's why I think he shot when he did. But I don't know. But
Yeah.
because, you know, there have been stories done about the difference in the two shots, you know, 0.6 of a second or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, as what allergy time? When they finally, well, when they, of course, they jumped on Ruby, and I fired a second shot right away, knowing my strobe would not recycle fast enough. So I have since put that in Photoshop and enhanced that picture, and it's still not very exciting. But the Sixth Floor Museum used it when they did the exhibit on my work. They had me do that, you know, clean it up and lighten it as much as I could. So it just shows bodies, you know, when they were wrestling him to the ground. But then I was able to get a good shot of when they put him in the ambulance. I just raised the camera up over, you know, raised my arms up and shot down on him. And so I got him on the stretcher as they put him in. So then, as soon as I could, I went in and used the phone in the hall, and my chief photographer said, you need to stay around there. We want to have a photographer there. We'll send somebody over to relieve you. And so he said, he said, the wire service is screaming. They want to see your stuff. He said, they've offered to send a runner over to get your film. And I said, no way am I giving my film to a runner. And I said to John, I said, what if he got hit by a bus on the way back? Because they would, if I remember right, they had runners that would be on bicycles and they'd go pick up film. You know, that's what I remember. I could be wrong, but I said he might get hit by a bus. I'm not giving you my film. And so John said, okay. So eventually somebody did come to the police station, and it was almost 2 o'clock when I got back to the paper. And I got off the elevator, and the wire machine was directly in front of me, 20 feet away or so. And people said, hey, come here, come here. And they had Jack Beer's picture on the wire. He had already put it on the wire. And they said, do you have anything as good as this? And I said, I'll let you know when I run my film. And so I went in and ran my film, and Mazziota, my chief, was standing right outside the door of the film room. And I remember holding the film up to the light, and it looked sharp. And I remember kind of letting out a yell or whatever. So John and I made a wet print, carried the wet print out to the newsroom, and then we realized we had beat the news. So
Nice.
So a couple of tidbits here that I learned from Lavelle over the years.
Yes.
You know, of course, everybody knows that when he was escorting Oswald through the booking room, and you know, and he said, Lee, if anybody shoots at you, I hope they're as good a shot as you are. And Oswald said, nobody's going to shoot me. And it's interesting if you think, why didn't he say nobody's going to shoot me, because I didn't shoot anybody?
There
but
you
he
go.
did not. He didn't try to defend himself, you know.
There you go. Yeah, Jim tells
And
that
they
story.
step out the door, and Lavelle said the TV light blinded me for a moment. He said I looked down below the light toward people's legs, and he said I saw Ruby's arm with the gun in his hand against his leg, and I knew what was going to happen. And I tried to jerk Oswald out of the way, because you can see in the picture, you can see he has his hand in his belt, Oswald's belt. And he said, I knew that what was going to happen in an instant, you know. I mean, it all happened so fast.
Yes.
And then another thing he said, when we got into the ambulance to ride to the hospital, he said, I could feel the bullet under the skin. I could roll it around under the skin.
Wow.
And when we got to the emergency room, he asked the doctor and the nurse, he said, I want that bullet. As soon as you get that bullet down, I want you to initial it, and I want it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty good police work, you know.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Thinking ahead.
Well, he also mentioned...
Yeah, and, you know, I wonder how many people know that the reason Oswald was handcuffed to Lavelle, he was his prisoner. He was his prisoner. He was not a prisoner for shooting Kennedy. He was the prisoner for shooting Tippit. Because Lavelle was assigned to the shooting of Tippit.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Technically, he was Lavelle's prisoner for the shooting of Tippit.
Jim also mentioned that Oswald wanted a sweater, so they had to take him off and uncuff him and pick one out. If Oswald hadn't asked for a sweater, maybe he would have got on out of there before Ruby got down the ramp.
Yeah, oh yeah. And of course, it's mind-boggling how Ruby was able to get down there.
But really, you didn't really know how long he had been there. You kind of noticed him when he took the shot for the first time.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean, the time, he couldn't have been there long at all, because you know, when he sent the wire to the stripper at the Western Union office, and he walked down the street toward the ramp, and the police car, the unmarked car, was coming up the ramp, which was the entrance ramp, but coming out the entrance ramp because they were going to take it around the block, and so that it would be the lead car, and the armored van would be behind it, which was going to be a decoy. And there was the one policeman at the ramp entrance, and when the car came out...
Which is real Pierce.
Which is what?
Pierce. Rio Pierce.
Oh.
So...
Anyway, the car comes up, the cop steps out into the street to make sure there's not traffic coming down the one-way street. The car pulls out, Ruby turns left and goes down the ramp, and then shoots Oswald. Now, the time frame there was like 4 minutes, or less than 4 minutes, from the time the wire was stamped in the Western Union office and the time he shot Oswald. A matter of 4 minutes, roughly. I can't remember how many seconds, or but the car comes out. The cop has left his post because he stepped out into the street to let the cops out. Ruby goes down the ramp.
And that was Roy Vaughn that stepped out to stop the traffic so Pierce can get on out and around.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
Yeah, and so you end up winning a Pulitzer Prize, which was actually 1964,
right,
for this picture. Tell us about your first impression and how'd you hear you won?
Well, people had said that weekend of the shooting, that, you know, after we came in and processed the film and everything, somebody says, how does it feel to win a Pulitzer? And I said, don't say that, you know. You start talking that way, it'll never happen. You were joking, you know.
Yeah.
So the day the Pulitzers were announced was let's see, I had come in, I had an assignment, and then I had another assignment coming up, and I remember I didn't have much time to eat. I hated to miss lunch. So I remember getting off the elevator, coming and go into the snack bar and eat my lunch, and they called me over to the wire machine and said they're announcing the Pulitzers. And so I went over there, and that's how I found out. And it's pretty exciting. And Felix McKnight, the managing editor, comes over, and I don't know, there was a little crowd around the wire machine. It's a real nice picture of us, with me in the middle, smiling. So that's how I found out. But, they didn't break out the champagne or anything like that, and I went in to the snack bar and ate my lunch because I had to make a 1 o'clock or 1:30 or whatever assignment. And I remember one of our reporters the headline was Jackson's lunch a little peptic, something like that.
That's nice.
But,
yeah. So do you own the picture copyright?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
Okay. So how many of those pictures do you think you've signed in your life? A zillion?
A lot, but people have asked me that, but I don't have a clue. I don't know what my guess would be.
Well, other than that picture, other than this one that I'm looking at now on my wall that I had Jim Lavelle sign.
Yeah.
Other than that picture, which one is your favorite over that weekend? Which would be your next favorite?
Well, I think definitely Kennedy at the chain link fence, shaking hands with people or reaching out to try to shake hands with him.
Okay, is that the one where Win Lawson is in the background, and then Jackie's in that picture as well?
Well, I've got several as they moved along the fence where Jackie's in it, but no, it's just side view of Kennedy's reaching out over the fence, and people are reaching out toward him. I'm surprised you haven't seen it somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure I have. And that's at Love Field, right?
Yeah, okay. That's when they were hoping, the Secret Service, I'm sure, was hoping that he'd get in the motorcade and they'd go. But he wanted to go greet the crowd.
Yeah.
So, and in that picture, it's kind of funny. In the background is a ramp, with you board a plane on, the old steps going up, and you'll see a figure on that. He's facing away from you, but that's Jack Beers.
Oh, okay.
Up high.
So I imagine this Pulitzer Prize has opened some doors for you. Where did you go next after you left Dallas?
Well, I debated about it. I mean, I always wanted to work for Life magazine or one of the big magazines, but I was married with one child and one on the way, and I was happy in the job. I had lots of friends, I was covering all kinds of motor racing because Carroll Shelby was a friend, and I hung out with them, and I had built up on the side, a clientele of drivers who would buy my shots of them racing. And I wanted to race, and I had a whole bunch of sports cars over the years, but in those days, you couldn't just go out and race unless you had a lot of money. Things are different now, but I did. I spent so much time at Carroll Shelby Sports Cars, which was down the street from SMU's campus, and I spent so much time there. He called me Three-Quarter Jackson because I spent 3/4 of my time there. And so I was happy. I was happy where I was at, And I thought, well, down the road, I might want to pursue something like that. But I was happy doing what I was doing, and it just never happened. It made it easier to get a job at the Denver Post when I decided I wanted to live in Colorado, because we'd come up here. My aunt had a lodge in Green Mountain Falls.
Okay.
And I always wanted to live in Colorado, and the Denver Post was a great place to work then. Not so much now, but then. So it made it easy, to get that job there without showing them a portfolio and all that.
Uh-huh.
And but then a year later, I went back. The Times Herald said, we want you to come back, So
there's a book out called
The Shot.
The Shot?
And it's my bio, and the family kept bugging me to do it. And Ann's husband, Jim, is Jim Burgess. He's retired Air Force, and he's written a fictional book. He had before he did my book, and then he's come out now with another book. But he did the book, and so we're waiting now. We had problems with publisher. We're waiting now for a new printing of the book to see if the quality is what we want. And he's waiting to get a copy, and in fact, it should be any day now. But it would be, you could get it through Amazon.
Oh. So this is a new book that's coming out.
Huh?
This is a new book that's coming out?
Well, it's been out. I mean, it's out. And then, like I said, we had problems with Archway Publishing. And they sent us a batch. They sent us 10 copies that were, quality went downhill, and they wouldn't do anything about it. And we sent them samples of comparisons and this, that, and the other. Long story. But anyway, he's changed. Jim's changed, and we are waiting for the new good copies, but there are a lot of them out. Yeah, I don't know how many. I can't remember how many we've sold, but
what year did it come out?
It's been out, and if you go to Amazon and go to the author, Jim Burgess, it's the best way to order one. But I'm not sure right now. We're kind of not pushing it to people who want to get it until we see this new printing.
The quality of the print. What year did the book originally come out?
Let's see. Oh, golly, I'm going to say 3 years ago.
Okay. Okay, good. Boy, I'd love to have one of those.
Sure, yeah. I think he did a great job, and it's got it's got a lot of the assassination stuff in it, and but it's got my career over 40 years, from his motor racing pictures in it, and then just regular old news photos. And
is there anything in the book that would surprise us? Well, I didn't know you were into cars, classic cars, race cars.
Oh, yeah, well, that's really what I really owe Shelby my career, because I was studying business at SMU, and I got really hooked on cars, and Shelby and Jim Hall opened up Carroll Shelby Sports Cars 3 blocks from SMU, and I started hanging out there, and they opened that in 1957. But I went to my first race in 1954 when I was still in SMU, which I never graduated from. But yeah, I went to my first race in 54, and I was hooked. And so then a year or so later, they opened up that, the dealership, and they sold BMC products, Rolls-Royce, Jag, Austin Healey, so forth, the Maserati race cars. And they were the Maserati dealer west of the Mississippi. And at that point, but there are others later, but I started going to the races and shooting the races, and my racing pictures and my Army pictures, because when I was in the National Guard, I was at headquarters company, and I was really personally General Finney's photographer. So I flew all over at summer camp. I'd fly all over the base with him, and I was in the section that we serviced all the newspapers in Texas. All the cities that had their troops, in the 36th Infantry. So it gave me a nice portfolio of pictures to show the Herald when I got the job.
But it's been a real pleasure talking with you, and admired your picture all these years. And I can't explain how nice it's been to visit with you, and I appreciate.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, enjoyed it. Now I can go work in the yard.
There you go. And thanks for being part of our group.
Or walking the dogs, one or the other.
And thanks for being part of our group. We appreciate when you make comments, thumbs up, and.
Okay. Well, I tell you, I think the truth be told, it's like a bunch of kids arguing with each other. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I know.
I don't see how you can stand it. But I mean, some of them are so ridiculous in what they've come up with in their studies.
Well, let me ask you this. This will be my final question.
Okay.
Who do you think shot President Kennedy?
Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald.
Do you believe Bobby's had help? No.
I believe he acted alone.
Yes. Okay, very good.
I believe Ruby acted alone. Ruby might have been a wannabe mafia or big time or whatever, but he was not. I believe he acted alone. I believe both of them, in one way or the other, wanted attention, wanted to be famous, whatever. And hey, one little thing, it's already been proven the shot was not that hard to make. It's been proven that was his rifle, in spite of what people say. It was, when I saw it, it was resting on the ledge. He wasn't standing up, standing position. He was resting it on the ledge, and if you ever go up there and look out that window, anybody that never has should. And of course, it's different now because of all the tree growth. But I know Lavelle always thought the same way I did. He always felt like he acted alone.